This is a one-speaker meeting, and please welcome our speaker tonight, Pat.
Can you see me? I'm Pat, a very grateful alcoholic. Well, you are not a glum lot, that's for sure. Never been to a meeting like this before. I'm what you get when the speaker cancels, because apparently the speaker canceled, and so I got a call from Judith Ann about Richard and blah, 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 and they promised me dinner, so I said, why not? You know, I'm a cheap date. I'm so grateful to be sober, and the people who took birthdays, you said everything. I mean, from the first year to the 24th year, that's the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm so grateful to be here. At dinner, Richard said to me, well, did you do drugs? And I said, well, I smoke grass, and I, took pills. He goes, well, he said, do you have any good drug stories? I said, I remember when I was a barroom drinker, and I was in the bar, and some guy next to me gave me a $1 bill that was all rolled up. And he said, go to the bathroom with it. He said, take this to the bathroom, or something like that. Go to the ladies' room. So I took it, and I put it in my pocket, and I had no idea what he was talking about. I put it in my pocket, promptly forgot about it. The next morning, I got up, and I went to the corner to get the New York Times. I reach in my pocket, and I take out the $1 bill, and I hand it to the guy behind the cashier, and all this stuff comes falling out, If only I had known. Anyway, I'll start off with something kind of that's been on my mind all day, and then I'll tell you my story. I got a phone call from my brother this afternoon to tell me that his wife, who's in the last stages of MS, is in ICU, and they don't expect her to live. And it's been a long struggle for both of them. And I hung up, and I started to make arrangements to go back to New York. And she's been suffering for 20 years. In the car over here, I was thinking, she has a disease. This woman did not deserve whatever she got, She's a bright, sweet, kind woman. And she has a disease, and there was nothing she could do about it. It was slow, unremitting MS. And I have a disease, and we have a disease. And all I had to do was put the drink down, come to AA, and work the steps. Be of service, take a commitment, get a sponsor, and my disease is abated. I no longer have to sit in a bar, drinking. I no longer have to wake up and have vodka and orange juice. I no longer have to worry. I lived in New York, so I didn't know how to drive, so I couldn't find out where my car was because I didn't have a car. So, I didn't have, but I would wake up in the morning and I would look over, and God knows what I brought home, and that was kind of terrifying to me. And, my life didn't start out like that. I'm from New York City. I was the sixth child of 7 children. We lived off Central Park. My mother was a decorator, an interior decorator. My father was a dentist. And I thought I was adopted. I thought I was ugly. I thought I was stupid. I would look in the mirror and cry. I had these big buck teeth, and I had this long stringy hair. And I was miserable. I was absolutely a miserable child. And I was primed for alcohol, And I'm Jewish, so we would have Passover, and at Passover they served 4 glasses of red wine, this very thick, sweet red wine, and I would drink these 4 glasses of red wine the first time. I think I was 9 years old, and I passed out, and I loved it, I couldn't wait for the next holiday. It was just, but I wasn't raised around drinking. My father had a bottle of Slivovitz. I don't know if anyone here in the room knows what Slivovitz is, but you can put a shot of that in your car and drive from LA to New York and back again and never have to put gas in the tank, And he would take 1 shot a year, and that was it, that was it. But I was an alcoholic from the day I was born. I had all the feelings of an alcoholic. I had all the insecurities, the sadness, I didn't belong, from day one. And what I wanted when I was younger was to kind of save the world and be somebody who made a difference in life. I wanted to act, I wanted to write, I wanted to shine, And what I ended up in the gutter, All those years of drinking, it robbed me of any good idea I ever had. And that's my story, that's my story. I remember when I was very young, I was picketing in front of the village. They had a women's prison there. That's how long ago it was. And I was picketing in front of the, for the women's rights, Little did I know that 10 years later I would be in a women's prison, and nobody was picketing for my rights, Because when I drank, I was obnoxious, Whatever came into my head went right out my mouth, I didn't censor what I said, I didn't care what I said, and I said it, I said everything that came into my mind, and I pissed a lot of people off. I'd wake up in the morning and, my jaw would hurt, and I didn't know who I had offended the night before. So my first love was reading. I used to love to read, and I would get lost in books all the time. Just said, put me in the library, and I was fine. Put a book in my hand, and I was fine. And that was my first addiction, if you can call it that. But it was a good addiction. When I was 19 years old, I met a guy, and he told me about martinis with a little breath of Pernod. And I said, this guy knows how to live, So I married him, And that was based on that, That was enough for me. And we were married for a very short time, and until I decided it was time for me to leave New York and to go to California and be an actress, be a movie star. So I called up some guy who had an ad on a bulletin board someplace, and it said, go to California, share driving and expenses. Well, A, I had no money, B, I didn't know how to drive. But I jumped in his car and ended up in California, where I stayed for about 6 months. And during that 6 months, I got thrown in jail for drunk walking. I was in the... because I didn't drive. And I was in the valley someplace. I didn't know it was the valley at the time. And I was, drunk. I had gone to a party, and, I don't know, I fell asleep on somebody's lawn. And the next thing I know, the police picked me up and carted me off to jail. And I think they only did it because I had a big mouth, I called them Nazis. I called them whatever. I call them things that you don't call a cop in L.A. And so I ended up in jail. That was Lincoln Heights, I believe. It was downtown. I don't know if it's still there or not, but anyway, so I was in jail, and the next day I got out of jail, and I don't really know what happened. I don't know whether they still want me or not, but all I know is that I got on the plane and went back to New York and decided to start my life over there again. And I started writing, and I started trying to make something of my life. And I decided to go to Paris. I figured if I'm a writer, all writers should live in Paris. I had a lot of wild experiences, but the truth is, my real life experience is this small, because wherever I went, I took that mind with me. I took the insecurity, the sadness, the feeling like a malcontent. I just never felt I belonged any place. So I went to Paris, and I was friendly with Isadora Duncan's brother. I don't know if any of you know who Isadora Duncan is, and you certainly don't know who her brother is, but I was like a second-tier celebrity seeker. So Isadora Duncan's brother and I became very good friends, and I ended up in jail in Paris, believe it or not. I ended up in the Bastille on Bastille Day because I was walking through the streets of Paris wearing only a sheet, and I was with a group of people, and I don't really know quite how I got to the jail, but there I was, and they weren't even as nice as the cops in L.A. were. They put you in a pen in the middle of the jail, and there you are, and everyone's looking at you. And anyway, I figured forget Paris, and I went back to New York to start my life over again, I was always starting my life over again. I was changing hairdos, clothes. I was always trying to be somebody else, except the person I was. So I get back to New York, and I met actually my second husband, who was turned out, well, he eventually became the father of my son, and we got married, and he was a pot smoker. He did not approve of drinking. He certainly didn't approve of my drinking, and I didn't approve of his pot smoking. So we would, at night, I would drink, well, in the wintertime, I drank something called Maker's Mark. In the summertime, it was vodka. And he would smoke, I remember for our anniversary, I got him Michoacan. I don't know if that was the exact name, Michoacan. It was $25 an ounce, and that was a lot of grocery money for me. Now, God knows what it is. But, I mean, that was, he was smoke grass, and I drank, and then he started to bring in hallucinogenics. Now, I'm not good without hallucinogenics, so with hallucinogenics, I'm pretty bad. And I remember one night we took acid, and I was tripping on the window in our living room for about 2 days. I just kept looking out this window, and I saw a whole movie going on in front of me. So I had my son, and and we moved out to California, where, see, I used to be a beatnik. Then as I got older, I became a hippie. So we went out to California, to San Francisco, and we lived in the Haight area, Haight-Ashbury, and what I did to make a little extra housekeeping, or pin money as they would call it in those days, was I would deal grass. And I would put the grass in my son's diaper bag, in his diaper, and I would fly to New York back and forth, And that's how I helped the family. So, did I miss something? Anyway, that was my life in San Francisco, and this marriage was doomed, and we would break up. And I remember he went out to San Francisco first by himself, and he would call me up and say, the liquor stores are open on Sunday, as a way to get me to come out here. And he knew exactly what to say. So I did come out here. He went back to New York, picked me up, and off we went. I know there are a lot of newcomers, and I know I just want to tell you that this program is a miracle program. I'm telling you these diehard stories because I was a falling down drunk. I could not stop drinking. And I probably couldn't stop drinking from the first day I drank. But I was kind of protected. I was protected by my youth, to be honest. I was protected by a marriage, to be honest. I was protected. But once I was on my own, but I knew that I was an alcoholic. I went to my first AA meeting when I was about 20 years old on Madison Avenue and 80th Street. And, I looked at those people. I said, oh, God, never. There was something like this group, to be honest. No, I'm joking. But they... No, actually, they were older. I'm looking around this room, and I would like to say I drank wine older than you. But the truth is I drank wine that had a screw top. Never a cork. I couldn't be bothered with a cork. So when we were in California, I found this wine. It was called Red Mountain. It was $1.99 a gallon. And, a grape never went near that wine, My teeth would turn blue. My eyeballs would turn blue. But it got me where I wanted to go. It got me where I wanted to go. I could no longer drink hard liquor because I got what they call alcoholic neuritis, and I couldn't walk. But that didn't stop me. See, nothing stopped me. I was a born-to-die drunk. Nothing could stop me. And here I had this little boy that I adored, and trying to be a parent, which I failed completely. And I'm so, Kurt, what you said about your mother, your name is Kurt, right, or Kyle? Kurt, what you said about your mother was so touching, It really was. I think of my son, and, the truth is I feel that I have shortchanged him, and that's, I have 30 years of sobriety, and I will always feel that I shortchanged my son. Because I was not the mother that he deserved, but I was the mother that he got. And he was about 5 or 6 years old, and we kept going back and forth from L.A. to San Francisco to New York and back again. And finally, I went back to New York, and I don't know how I ended up in Spain, but I ended up in Spain there for a couple of years, and I thought I was going to write the great American novel, and I wrote shit, you know. I mean, I probably wrote that on the paper, you know, because I was in love with the beat poets, you know. But, you know, I had nothing. I had no follow-through. I had great ideas. I had no follow-through because once I took, as Judith Ann would say, beverage alcohol, I was done. I was done for the day. If I took it at 8 o'clock in the morning, I was done. I couldn't do a thing. So my son and I lived in Spain, and then I came back after a couple of years, and I was no longer young. I wasn't even that particularly attractive anymore. My face was red, my hair was orange, you know. I thought if I was a redhead, you know, I'd have more fun, you know. But I ended up, and this is my recovery. I was in New York. I lost my son. He went to live with his dad, and I ended up drinking, you know, alone in the bars, you know, dragging home whatever. You know, I remember once I was in a bar on Columbus Avenue. I kept drinking and drinking, and nothing would happen. I didn't get drunk, and I called the police. I said, "They're selling watered-down alcohol here." I mean, I was so self-righteous. You know, I'm not drunk enough. You know. So I decided. I mean, I was crazy. You know, I was crazy. And, you know, when I talk about those days, I'm almost embarrassed to tell you who I was because I'm nothing like that person anymore. I am nothing like that person anymore. And I went out to San Francisco to try and see my son, and they lived in Boulder Creek, which is up in some friggin' mountain outside of Santa Cruz. I'd sit in the Greyhound bus station. I would drink the grapefruit juice and vodka in the morning, get on the bus, get off the bus, drink, call my ex-husband and say, "Ralph, I'm down here, you know, bring Max." He goes, "You're too drunk," and he would hang up. And eventually he would bring Max down, and, you know, I have some photos of that time. I don't know why I would even permit a photo taken of me at that time, but I remember there was a little coffee shop near the Greyhound bus station that Ralph would meet me at with my son. And, you know, I was puffy, I was bloated, I made no sense to anybody. So anyway, I went out, long story short, well, long story longer, I came out to LA and I stayed on somebody's sofa. Some friend of mine that I knew in New York, she and I would sit behind the trees in Central Park while our kids were out in the playground, and we would smoke grass while all the other mothers were going over what they were making for dinner that night, you know, and she and I would sit behind these bushes and smoke dope. And so I called her up, and I stayed. She was living in West LA, and I stayed on her sofa. She and her husband were out here with their kids, and I stayed on their sofa, and they didn't drink. You know, she smoked grass, but they didn't really drink, and I sort of felt, I don't know why. Why, out of all that time, after 23 years of drinking, I got embarrassed. You know, I didn't want to get drunk in front of them because they were, you know, they put a roof over my head, and, you know, I was sleeping on their sofa, and I was trying to, like, maintain some kind of dignity, and so I said, "Oh, I'll call AA." You know, I had seen, you know, I knew from years ago, and I'll Cry Tomorrow, and, you know, anytime they ever had anything about an alcoholic on TV, I would put my head down because I was so filled with shame. You know, I think shame was my overriding feeling when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. I was so ashamed of myself. And I called AA and I said, and they came. Actually, no, they didn't come. The first meeting I went to a bar on Westwood Boulevard, and I was going to Ohio Street. And I went to this bar, and I had 2 shots of brandy and with a beer. That was my drink of choice then was like scotch, cheap scotch, you know, at those cheap bars in New York. I forgot what they were called, and a shot and a glass of beer. You know, I love that. But anyway, I had 2 shots of brandy, and I went to this Ohio Street meeting, and everyone looked so clean and nice and put together, and I said, no way. I said, you know, I took that one acid trip too many. I had that one drink too many. I said, I'll never make it. I'll never make it. And it was almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy because I didn't make it. And for 2 years, I would go to meetings. Everyone would give me their number. and I would throw the number out, and I would go home and I would get, some wine and start drinking. And I did this for 2 years until the embarrassment of raising my hand. I have a lot of ego, or I did. Somebody pointed out the steps will knock that out of you. I just didn't want to raise my hand anymore. I knew I was going to end up in Alcoholics Anonymous. I knew it was either that or die, and I was sometimes ready to die. I was sometimes ready to die. But I wanted my son back. That was my clarion call. I want my son back. I want my son back. So I got a sponsor, and she said, oh, give it at least a year or two. I fired the sponsor. I said, forget it. I'm going to get someone who's going to tell me, you'll get him back next week, And of course, nobody would, And so Max would come down and visit me on weekends, and I would try and work the best program I could. And I went to a lot of meetings. I went to 2 meetings on Saturday, 2 meetings on Sunday, a meeting every single day. I got a job typing scripts at a script service on Santa Monica and Fairfax, and I would work there from 10:30 at night. In those days, the meeting started at 8 and they ended at 10. So, 8:30 to 10. So I would get off of work at 10 o'clock, leave a meeting at 10 o'clock. I would run down to Barbara's place, that was the name of it, and I would type until like 2 o'clock in the morning when I knew there was an Alpha Beta across the street and I could not buy any alcohol. I just knew. So then I felt safe. And, the first couple of years was a big struggle for me. It was a big struggle, and I made it more difficult because I was someone who said no. Whatever you suggested, it was no. And then I went home to think about it. It was just, I had to learn to take contrary action. I had to learn to trust others. I had to learn to find a higher power. I had to learn all these things. I had been raised an atheist, to be honest. My parents never really believed in God, although we had, we were like Sunday Jews. We'd have bagel lox and Chinese food, and, that was it. That was the extent of our religion and the holidays. And, so it was very hard for me. Saying the Lord's Prayer has always been very hard for me. And anyway, my son came back to live with me after a couple of years, First I went up to Boulder Creek to make an amends to my ex-husband. When he would come to visit me in New York, I remember once he came and he brought boots for his new wife. And I put carpet tacks in the boots, because I didn't like the idea that he had a new wife. And so I had a lot to, and I was one who would call him at 3 o'clock in the morning. Oh, you would have done it too. A girl's got to do what she's got to do, you know what I mean? So, I was calling him 3 o'clock in the morning drunk, so I had to go up there and I had to tell him I was a lousy wife. I was an alcoholic, which was no surprise to him, and part of staying sober was making an amends to people that we've hurt, and I knew that I hurt him, and I knew that I hurt my son. And he changed the oil in my car and patted me on the head and put Max in the car, and off we went, and that was the beginning of the healing process, because as I said, I was so filled with shame. I remember I met a man in the program who used to say, my name is, I think, Alan or something, and I am sorry. I am sorry for the way the world is. I'm sorry for everything, And that's how I felt. I felt so guilty about everything that went on in this world and in my life, in your life. It was like this overwhelming guilt that I felt. So, anyway, when I was drinking, I used to be a writer of adult fiction, if you get my drift, and that's how I made the money I had to live on, which paid me a lot. So I had a little bit of savings, and I was able to live here for a while without working. And then I went to Barbara's place, and then my life began. My sober life began. I was 39 years old when I got sober. I was 39 years old, and I really thought I had, I was finished, but I wasn't. AA gave me a life back. It gave me a sense of hope, which I never had before. It gave me a sense of community, which I never had before. Somebody talked about the family being, in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's exactly what happened. You people became my family. We celebrated holidays together and birthdays together and life together. And then my son came back to live with me, and then he became bar mitzvahed, and then all of a sudden life started to get very big for me, or big in my world. I was able to get a job and keep a job. I was able to go to New York and go to cooking school and come back and start a little catering business. I was able to meet Sonia, who was one of my first sponsees, you know. And when I met Sonia, and it's interesting, she's going to hate me for saying this, but you know, when I met Sonia, she was like this tiny little person who was scared of everything. She used to shake when she would light a cigarette. And you know how they say people know we're better before we do? And as I watched her progress, you know, I'd pick her up at meeting, you know, pick her up and take her to a meeting, and you know, there she'd be sitting on the, you know, in front of her house, you know, and she'd get in the car. We wouldn't say two words to each other, and she was so frightened, you know. And it was the strength that I got from the program that I was able to give to Sonia. And Sonia's sober today for a long time, you know, and that's what we do. We hand the message down, and then you carry it out to other people. And I bless everyone who's been in my life who saved me. You know, I've had, somebody said they had, 8 sponsors in 3 years, or 4 sponsors in 8 years, or something like that. Anyway, I've had about 3, 4 sponsors, you know, and there was a time when I didn't have a sponsor, and those were the loneliest times. You have to get a sponsor. Trust me on this one. Grab anybody. You know, there's someone that you create a history with. You know, somebody's gonna say, "Oh yes, don't you remember like 5 years ago you did the same thing?" Well, anyway, I had sponsors. I worked the steps. I was terrified. I stayed sober. When I didn't want to, I stayed sober. I got married in the program. I stayed sober. I got divorced in the program. I stayed sober. You know, I stayed sober through everything. My mom died when I was sober, and I was able to go back there. I had a brother who died about 5 years ago. He was running. He was the head of the family, and he was. Sounds like we're mafia, but anyway, he was running in the park upstate New York, and a tree jackknifed and hit him. You know, it's just one of those random things in life, you know. And why him and not me? You know, why am I given this gift of sobriety, this life that I treasure? I worked at a studio until about 5 years ago, and then I retired, and I've been going a little crazy ever since. And, you know, I had a big problem with God. And I remember I was in the hospital. Oh, okay, fast. I was in the hospital, I was on the gurney, didn't believe in God that much. And I was on the gurney getting ready for the operation. And all of a sudden, I got it. I got it that I've been taken care of. I am taken care of. I will be taken care of. And, you know, that's all I had to know. And ever since then, life has been great. Son got married. I never thought he would. I'm going to be a grandmother. I never thought I would. And, you know, I want to thank Judith Ann and Richard and Neil for having me, and thank you all for being here.